accompanied by live demonstration if time will permit. So by the end of his section, at least one redesigned or AI resilient assessment task will be done, if time permits. Otherwise, it will give us something to take home, a checklist or framework for evaluating future assessment or increase confidence in managing assessment in the AI-rich environment. I can't wait to take us through, or for them to take us through all this. Now I'll have the singular honor to introduce Professor Prof. Eric Anani. If you look at his background, he holds PhD in education from the University of Durham, specialized in assessment, cognition, and teacher education. His expertise bridges educational psychology, psychometrics, and innovative teaching methodologies. Prof. He is a faculty member at the University of Education, Winneba, where he contributes to teacher education, curriculum development, and educational assessment. So Prof serves as a key advisor on the assessment with TTEL. TTEL stands for Transforming Teaching, Education, and Learning, a major initiative focused on improving teacher education and learning outcomes in Ghana. How about his research contribution? His research spans assessment in schools, psychometrics, teacher education, and cognition. He has published widely with a growing citation record reflecting his impact in the field of education and learning sciences. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce Prof. Eric Anani, a distinguished scholar and advisor in education assessment. Please help me welcome Prof. Anani. Prof, please, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. And with this introduction, it means that much is expected. To whom much is given, much is expected. So I'm very honored to be part of this program, and I hope that we'll be able to meet the expected outcomes. So if you permit me, I think I can share my screen now.
Yes, Prof, you have been co-hosted.
Okay, please. Okay, please. Thank you very much. So just a moment to bring up. Okay, thank you very much. So as you said earlier, the focus on this presentation is on strides in assessment, especially in higher education institutions. And as is already established, we are in for training people to meet the developmental needs of our specific nations or nationalities or communities. And therefore, one key factor or one key leg of the structure in terms of higher education is assessment. And we want us to look at what is good in terms of our current practice, what is bad. Bad being here doesn't really mean that we don't need it, but maybe the way we are practicing, there's much to be improved on. And then what is ugly, we look at these three facets relative to our practices and see what we can do. I'm Eric Anani, a key advisor for TTEL in terms of assessment and curriculum development as well, and director at the Institute of Education. So in the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be looking at why assessment is being reinvented in our higher education institutions. Why the need for assessment? Have we paused to think about what really goes into assessment, what we need to do, and the reasons why we need to put in much effort at whatever we are doing now? What is good? In terms of assessment alignment, and when we talk about alignment, we all have some outcomes, competencies, and qualities we want our students to have or develop. How are we aligning our curriculum, as well as the pedagogies being employed and the assessments that we engage in so that we achieve the aims or the goals that we want. How are we giving feedback? How are we using the analytics that AIs or generative AIs are bringing to make sure that we improve our systems and making sure that our assessment is quite authentic, it's reflective of what society needs. It's reflective of the various abilities of our students to achieve a holistic measure of learning or our teaching situations. What is bad? Yes, we look at it as bad because if you look at our current situation, for us to be able to achieve the ends that we want, there is a need to engage in variety of assessments, and we need to engage in more and more of assessment practices using different tools. And if you look at the number of students we have now, this is really bringing a toll on faculty, is bringing the toll on the learners and all the systems in terms of how data needs to be kept, analysis and interpretation and use of information. So everybody seems to be overworking now. Inequity, if you check the way assessment is being practiced, it appears that some people are not being given the needed opportunities or uh, environment to be able to demonstrate whatever they need. Misalignment is also happening. If you go to our job places, people are complaining of our students and our products. Even though they have first class, many people or many of us seem to suggest that the first class is really not reflecting in what our students can do. What then is the gap? What is happening in terms of what we assess and what our students are doing vis-a-vis the interpretation of the grading system, whether we are achieving valid results in that sense. And then also, if you look at low assessment literacy among faculty, currently I was having a discussion with a colleague, and all you could sense was that assessment is being viewed as testing. It's all about measurement. Oh, you can use assessment to determine critical thinking. You can use assessment to determine value, integrity. Then you get the sense that within faculty members, do we have what it takes to be able to assess? Do we really even understand assessment? So what is bad in our current dispensation is that there is low assessment literacy. People don't really seem to understand the power of assessment and what we do in our system. So we tend to sometimes focus
Nyɛ
on
paa
only
nini.
one aspect of,
Oh,
Please
sorry,
kindly mute your mics. Those at the background, please. Kindly mute your mics.
yeah. So as I was saying, assessment literacy is low. And then what is ugly and coming up, in as much as we want to use AI to support our work, whatever the situation is, AI is very good. It is making sure that we are becoming efficient. We can do more within short time, but we can only achieve this if the competencies required to make sure that we adapt these generative resources to help us to do. Unfortunately, people are seeing it as a means of cheating the system. So when you give assessment to students or learners, instead of making sure that they exhibit the ability and use these AIs to refine or check or validate, they rather just generate. And in some cases, they copy instructions such as, I don't understand the instruction you have given me. That tells you that they don't even read over whatever has been generated for them. And then contract theses being written here and there. Somebody is just churning out theses and dissertations. And the most worrying aspect of it is even PhD students who are buying their theses. That is one thing that we need to have a critical look at. And then trust erosion. And again, this is related to the validity of whatever certificate that we have. Trust is really going down in the system. Now you barely trust what students have produced for you, whether it is coming from them or it is being sourced outside, because you can see traces of it. But all is not lost yet. There are practical research situations we need to secure and make sure that our assessment becomes authentic. That is why the clinic is very, very important, that we get to know which tools, what skills we need to sharpen to be able to give assessments which are very potent. If even AIs will have to be employed, there is still the opportunity for students to exhibit the required skills. So there is hope in as much as we are lamenting on all these things. There are practical situations we can use to make sure that we get inclusive and authentic assessment. So going into detail of what we are talking about, assessment matters because assessment goes beyond grades. We need to look beyond the obvious. All that we have known through our student days and becoming faculty and practitioners is that we assess only when we want grades. But if you look at our education structure, assessment is the beginning, assessment is the continuous process, assessment is the end. Because whatever you want to teach, you need to do engage in assessment to know whether what you want to put across is the right behavior or the right competencies and skills you want to develop. As you go through, you need to constantly, through formative assessment, to check whether you are developing the right attitudes or you are using the right tools and skills. And when it is all said and done, you need to also assess to know whether we have what we say we have in terms of certification or ability, what we say we can do. So you can see that assessment cannot be left out. Assessment shapes what students choose to learn. It is obvious. Practice across the world indicates that the way assessment is done shapes the way students also learn. So if there is contract cheating, if students are buying their thesis, it could probably be the way assessment is being carried out. Is the focus just on the assessment or is measurement rather than assessment serving as a developmental gauge for us to be able to help shape behavior, for us to be able to develop skills? Is assessment being used as a tool of support or tool of punishment? Whichever the case is, the higher the stakes, the higher the tendency of students choosing to learn what comes on our assessment. So we can use assessment well to make sure that students are learning what needs to be learned if assessment is carried out effectively. Assessment signals institutional standards and credibility. All of us here, the moment we mention the institutions we attended, definitely there is some sort of image that comes to mind in terms of academic rigor and quality. So that tells you that the way assessment is carried out in each institution is very, very important because it's a mark of standards. It's a mark of credibility and integrity, and it represents the institution. So individuals, as we go through in terms of faculty, what we do as a form of assessment, we need to be aware that we are reflecting the image of our institutions and our nation. To some extent, we may be representing through our assessment our national identity. And therefore, we need to be mindful of that. Assessment influences equity. If assessment is carried out well and it is fair, everybody seems to be able to demonstrate their abilities. If it is not done well, then you disadvantage people. Let's get a scenario where two people are going to get to be employed, and we all submit our certificates. And the employer didn't know how you achieve your grades or I achieve my grades. Assuming I use cheating systems to be able to get a grade. So the employer says, yes, you are first class. I've employed you. The first stage is that somebody does not get employed because the person is showing true ability. So before the employer realizes that I cannot even do the work, even though my certificate is good, there is some unfair treatment to the other person. And in our current world, this is really going on. So you could see that it is not always, majority of the times, our certificates reflecting what we can do or whatever we have written reflecting our abilities. So we need to engage in assessment such that the true abilities of individuals are reflected. And how do we do that? So if I have some competencies or skills, I should be able to engage in assessment that will show that. If the person has communicative skills, the assessment should be able to show that, and so on and so forth. Now, we should also be aware that assessment's primary lever or assessment is a primary focus for improving teaching and learning. With that assessment, how do you know that the pedagogy or the strategies you are using are really working? How do you get to know that learning is taking place? How do you know that outcomes are being achieved? How do you know that the targets that you set for yourself in the curriculum is being achieved? That again establishes the importance of assessment in everyday activities as faculty or as higher education institutions. So with these four situations we've created here, it tells you that assessment needs to be carried out well so that we can achieve our common ends. So what is good about assessment? We need to engage in constructive alignment. In developing our course outlines, in developing our programs, in developing our curricula, what do we seek to achieve when students go through our programs at the end? What is it that we are expecting from them? We need to be clear about that. We often say that, oh, students nowadays are not critical thinkers. It means we have not set out to teach critical thinking. We have not set out to engage them in situations or experiences that will give them that ability to be able to be reflective and reflexive in whatever they do. So assessment helps us to think before we even put down what we want to teach. That is, we need to define the learning outcomes clearly. And this can help us to choose the appropriate teaching and learning strategies we want to employ to achieve that. What experiences do we want to engage our learners in? There should be that alignment. Then we can think of how do we get to know whether students have had this behavior developed, this skill developed, and this value established. Then assessment tools selection comes in or format comes in. So the alignment is between the three stages. I normally call it a wheel. These three wheels move together. When one is disengaged, the system becomes disengaged. So the learning outcomes is moved by the pedagogy that you establish, as well as the assessment being used. And all these three are engaged at the same time. So if they are moving, they move smoothly together. If one is being focused and the other is not, you are not going to achieve a balanced educational system. So Design teaching activities to elicit those learning outcomes. Then assessment should also reflect the teaching and learning activities as well as the expected learning outcomes. So if you want students to be critical thinkers, then your teaching should engage them in that. Your assessment should reflect the same. So you can't ask students to be engaging in activity-oriented teaching and learning. Then when it comes to assessment, it's all about quizzes and recall because there are many. No, the way you teach should reflect in the way you assess. And that is why AI or AIs are becoming handy if you use it well. And I believe that by the time we are done with these activities here, we will get at least the initial indications as to how we can employ these tools effectively. Then results. The good thing is that clearer expectations are set if we are able to engage in constructive alignment. Clearer expectations are set if we are engaged in the use of AIs to fine-tune whatever activities we want to engage our learners in and the experiences we want to provide. Fairer grading systems are established, especially when we make use of scoring rubrics. Scoring rubrics provides opportunity for you to set out what needs to be learned, how learning should take place, and how assessment will be carried out, or what behavior needs to be demonstrated if I want to move from the back, how those behaviors need to be learned, and what is set out to be achieved. And then the bottom line is that better learning is provided or occurs in our environment because we are all clear. And what I mean is that the students, the faculty, the institution, and the general public, we all know the benchmarks and the standards to be met in that regard. Then another aspect of what is good is that feedback is powerful. Assessment feedback is very, very important because it helps our students to know what gaps are there and be able to put measures to close those gaps. Feedback becomes powerful using formative assessment when our strategies are put into question as to whether the approach we are using, be it face-to-face, virtual, or whether a remote form of learning is carried out and is working. So formative feedback helps to build students' capacity to self-regulate. And in assessment, it is very, very important. This is where we call self-assessment and peer assessment practices. When students get to know what they need to learn, how they need to learn, and how assessment is going to be carried out, they do so without sometimes our whip, let me say, for use of better word, whether we need to follow them, whether we need to push them, they do the learning on their own. And this can only happen when the value of what they need to learn is also known. Many a time, students get into our lecture rooms and our environment without really knowing what they are taking away and why they need to learn the courses they have to. Oh, it is a core course. You must learn. Why should I learn? How is it going to affect me, either now or in the future? So we need to set out the value of what we are teaching and how we teach it, as well as how assessment is being carried out. Good practice, it feeds up our goals, it makes us to be current, and then it gives us a feed forward activity, or it tells us the next steps to be taken. So feedback gives us to shape our goals and learning outcomes. It makes us current to employ the most current situations or teaching strategies to be used to meet the current needs of society, and also to predict or to feed forward or to determine the next steps in our activities. As a good practice, let's use rubrics. Let's provide exemplars, and let's make use of peer review to scale quality feedback. It shouldn't always be us. It should be more of the student-centered approach. We are there as facilitators. We are guiding them. So even the assessment forms that we engage in, we need to engage them to tell us what forms of assessment will be most appropriate. And if they get to understand, they even do it, as we have said, they self-regulate, self-monitor to be able to be reflective on their own activities. And let's make sure that we use short cycles of assessment, that is formative constant reviews, rather than waiting for some episodic form of assessment at the end of the semester. Again, it all comes to there are many, we don't have the resources, we don't have time, so we wait, end of semester, then everybody feels, oh, the students are not good. If the students are not good, what it means is that the system is not good. What it means is that the teaching experiences are not good. What it means is that the assessment practices are not good. So we need to be able to own some of the shortfalls in the system rather than pushing everything. After all, if the students were good, they wouldn't have been sent to us to shape. So it is our responsibility to be able to do some of these things. Now, talking about the good side again is the use of digital assessment. Digital assessment make assessment to be fast, efficient, and better. Whoever says that the use of AI in assessment is bad probably doesn't understand it well. Now, if you per practice, in fact, per all the experiences I've had, one area faculty members, especially those of us in higher education, fall short is the use of multiple choice. We have criticized multiple choice as a weak format when it comes to assessment, because we don't have the skills to use it. Because in environments where the skill is there and they're able to use it effectively, it is the critical part of assessment. And you can use it to assess higher order thinking. If you want to assess DOK, that's depth of knowledge levels, 2, 3, 4, you'll be able to do that. Or higher taxonomy levels, you can do that. But because we don't have the skills, I had the opportunity to give some training to physicians and surgeons in Ghana. If you go to medical school, their professional examination, about 300 questions, they are all multiple choice. But if you're not careful, you can score 0. So if you come into our system, we lack the skills of crafting quality assessment tasks and items. And where digital tools come handy is in this area. It can help us to shape the way we write our items if we use it appropriately. So these digital tools can help us in computer-based testing or assessment, or the use of LMS. I think in most universities, LMS are there. But all that we do is that we just put materials there, students go and do it. We write our items and dump them there. We don't check the quality. But LMS and CBTs and computer adapted systems help us to improve the way assessments are done. So it enables rapid feedback and item analytics. Many of us don't do item analysis. It is required. Because when you do item analysis, it gives you the shortfalls where students' ability is low and where performance is high, which areas need to be retaught, which areas need to be considered, where you need to give more assignments and so on and so forth, where you need to reteach. So item analysis is one of the skills we need to sharpen in our environment to know whether we are meeting the curriculum targets or the standards we have set for ourselves. Digital assessments help us to better track learning outcomes in terms of topic, in terms of cohort, or by demographics. It helps us to be able to determine all these things. Digital assessment systems improve scalability. You can deploy quality assessment across large groups. You can give projects. You can give performance assessments and use digital tools and systems to be able to score. For example, if you develop very good rubric, you can feed it into AI and give all the necessary parameters for the AI to be able to score assessments and give you feedback individually or in groups. And this can enhance our efficiency in terms of what we do in our classrooms. What we need to notice is that technology must serve pedagogy. It doesn't replace it. We are not comfortable in the current platform we are on. Now people are complaining AI is bad, students are copying. Then I say that we really don't know what we want to do or what we want to do with these AIs. It has come to stay. We need to see how we can use it effectively in our pedagogical approaches. How can you use AI to teach? As I sit here, if you use AI to construct multiple choice, there are a lot of technical details you need to put in to be able to have quality items. So if you just ask, oh, AI or ChatGPT, write multiple choice on this one for me, it will generate it. But there may be some technical shortfalls. So we need to learn the technicalities. Are the items really, is the stem clear? Is the item really the language being used? Is it context related? Is it related to how you taught it in your classroom or lecture halls? Is the language appropriate for the level you are teaching, the grade level? All these technicalities, you need to guide the AI to be able to do it for you. So AI can never replace pedagogy. AI cannot replace lecturers. AI cannot replace the humans that we need in the system. The decisions we need to make cannot be replaced by AI. But we need to make sure that we use these digital tools and systems to be able to improve all that we do, to make sure that we become efficient. So what are some of the examples of good assessment governance that we can engage in? The use of external examiners and moderations are common quality assurance mechanisms. I think most of us do use some of these things. For example, there are times that some of us go to other neighboring countries to monitor their teaching practice and their scores. We go to other universities to do some of you come to University of Cape Coast, some of us come to University of Education, University of Ghana, UDS, and all over to check how things are going on. So with these digital tools, we can do it better. We can do it remotely. We can do it in large volumes and still give quality feedback. Documented moderation reports and external examiner reports are often required. And in most institutions, sometimes some of these reports, if you track them or trace them, you cannot find them. The files containing them, you can't find them, and so on and so forth. How can we use digital tools to make sure that our filing system, documentation, and information is kept well report. For good assessment practices, information and reports need to be kept such that it serves as evidence to check validity. Validity is all about evidence. If you don't have evidence to support whatever is being projected, the quality or the results is valid up to whatever evidence is available. And therefore, information keeping and keeping records is very, very important. Now, some institutions publish detailed assessment and moderation policies. Do we have assessment policies? In most of our institutions, we engage in assessment, apart from the one that is in students' handouts. We really don't have assessment policies. We need to have them. Purposeful assessment requires meaningful policy as a guideline for all of us to understand what is required of us and how assessment is going to be practiced, what form of tools are going to be used so that it doesn't become as and when. And then every subject area or course area come out with appropriate assessment strategies and formats that could be used. If you are practical oriented, your assessment should be in that situation. It shouldn't be one size fits all. In our institutions now, everybody should do a quiz by this time. Everybody does end of semester sit down examination, paper and pencil. Whether you are engaging in physical education, you are engaging in practical oriented this, or you are doing artwork, or you are doing this examination. That is killing our system. It is not meeting the outcomes that are expected. So we should be able to come out with a clear policy. And I believe that through these projects, we will help institutions to come out with detailed assessment policies and moderation practices. Then we should also engage in internal quality assurance and auditing and documentation practices. In most cases, we don't tool and retool our quality assurance and academic planning units. Sometimes you say that, oh, yes, this lecturer has been in this university, he understands the whole thing. So you are the quality assurance or academic planning head. Then we put people there. We should understand that quality academic planning and internal audit units, when it comes to academic matters, should be people who understand the expected targets, goals of the institution and every unit or every college, departments, and centers. Then you can put in structures that will help such experiences to be developed, as well as the assessment and how assessment results are projected. The bad. Yes, it is very difficult to talk about them, but we are engaging in too many quizzes. We are so much sort of fixated in giving quizzes. When you don't give quizzes, it's almost like you're not doing anything. But there are critical assessment, authentic assessment, projects, group work that seek to support the current needs and skills of our generation. Collaborative practices. How do you achieve these, or how do you assess whether these are developed using quizzes? Task and continuous assessment normally can reduce the depth. We are more of a surface learning institutions. We don't go depth. So our students are really not digging deep, especially our postgraduate units. So if you have PhD students writing quizzes and end of semester examinations, or Master of Philosophy students or master students doing more of quizzes and end of semester, how can they generate knowledge? How can they make use of knowledge to solve societal problems and predict the future? Now, we are also saying that over-assessment can generate staff and student fatigue. Sometimes we get tired of the system and the assessment being practiced. Assessment should be fun assessment should be motivating enough for people us to do more and to learn. So students optimize for points, not mastery. So it's about grades. So that is where you hear of students search for grades, student giving materials for grade. I heard that in some jurisdictions, students just buy things for supervisors who are supervising project work, and that is done. In some jurisdictions, lecturers write project work and sell it to students. It is becoming bizarre. So we need to have a real look at this and make sure that assessment really makes learning motivating and support learning and relax our practice. Lecturers face marking overload because we don't have the skills to make sure that we use other forms of assessment. So all we know is it should be essay, essay. If you have 300 students in your class, how do you give them essay and score everybody and give feedback? Is essay really supporting the skills and competencies we need to develop? How do you assess the various aspects of the individual development? We need to have a real look at our assessment practice. So the solution, fewer better assessments with a clear purpose and value is more important than the number of assessments we give. I always say that as an assessment person, my focus is not on continuous assessment should be 40 or 60 or 50. It's about what the grades represent. So if I give you an assessment and it represents 10, what is the meaning of that 10? What can you do if you score 8 out of the 10? What can you do if you score 5 out of the 10? Assessment should be meaningful. So we should prefer fewer, better, in-depth critical assessment that really gives more of the 21st century skills required, adaptive expertise and value, integrity, than doing more quizzes and our students having grades without anything to show. Then misalignment and inequality in how our learning is assessed. So we have discussed this one over and over. So as outcomes say critical thinking, exam is testing recall. If you do analysis of most of us, our items, yes, our course outlines say they should be able to demonstrate, they should be able to examine, they should be able to analyze. Meanwhile, all our items are what is this? Define that, mention that, state that. Group work without good design can create unfairness. We give group work, but because of the way it is designed, some people do it, others cook for others to eat, and so on and so forth. Digital device, we have connectivity issues, we have disability access, adaptations are poor, we don't really adapt our items, or we don't really create forms that will go for everybody. So equity requires that multiple pathways to evident to learning should be provided. So we should use UDL models in as a universal design learning models in assessment, give multiple representations, give opportunities for students to exhibit the assessment in different forms. Then, again, another bad situation we need to have a real look at is supervision or proctoring. We need to make sure that cheating is very high, so we need to heighten our supervision processes. We need to now bring some sort of cameras. We need to use softwares to be able to help us to raise surveillance and make sure that cheating is minimized. We need to get softwares that can detect plagiarized documents. We need to make sure that we use systems that can help us to be able to detect works that are not coming from students. And we need to train our faculty to be able to know some sort of materials that are written by systems without our contribution. Definitely, we can use the system to improve, but we should be able to acknowledge such sources and make sure that we also put ourselves into it. Now, AIs can humanize. They can write such that you wouldn't be able to detect whether it was material if you use some indicators. But again, if faculty is trained well, they should be able to help. So secure assessment does not always mean high-tech surveillance. We should also be able to know that the fact that you are using CCTV cameras and you are using AIs to detect what is written by humans and what is written by machines does not mean that your assessment is secure. Currently, assessment being done, you hear that people have leaked the items to either their colleagues, their friends, and so on and so forth. So these are the issues. We need to also be able to let people get to know that validity is the critical issue. Institutional integrity, faculty integrity is something that needs to be raised so that we don't destroy the system. Okay, so what is ugly? I think we'll finish very soon. Contract cheating and essay mail economy. Now, people are getting money from preparing assessments and assessment results for the system. But in so doing, we are not getting to know whether the right behavior or the right skills are being developed. So outsourcing assessment for payment is really killing the system, including examinations. Now, again, thesis writing is an examination. So if you contract somebody to write your thesis for you, then it means that the examination is being written by another person. How do we get to know whether you have the ability or not? So we need to make sure that now we can find a way of detecting the document source. In most cases where the documents were generated, we can have a way of detecting it. There are softwares to help us. We need to be able to help in that. We should also be able to, again, train faculty to be able to know the work that a student can produce and the work that a higher or an experienced individual has done. Assessment design should change. The way we write our items and the way we give us items, we need to change them. And again, the practical work opportunities that we go through should be able to help us to do some of these things effectively. So if you are given, let's say, multiple choice items, how do you arrange it such that individuals within the system can have different items coming up differently, different difficulty levels showing up differently, and how the assessment is put if you haven't had practical experience or any knowledge. Superficial knowledge cannot help you to be able to answer. These are some of the things that we need to put in place to be able to do. Integrity is a culture and a system, not only punishment. Looking out for people who go over our rules to punish shouldn't be the way to go. How do we establish integrity and culture of adhering to rules governing our assessment? There are some institutions, when they give assessments, whether in the form of a test project or whatever, students don't even ask their colleagues unless it is a group work or collaborative effort. You don't need to proctor it. You don't need to supervise because they are even shy of doing it because they know that it amounts to cheating. Have we developed that culture in our students? Are we able to control or develop such behavior in our students? We need to be intentional about these things to develop integrity, especially in our assessment administration. Then detection isn't really the only strategy. I always say that prevention in assessment is better than waiting to detect what has been done wrongly to correct it. Our focus in our institution is to develop our students, develop our human resource, develop our citizens to be able to help in our developmental agenda, to develop the world, contribute to the world market, and so on and so forth. So why do we wait till the end when everything has been destroyed before you are able to correct it? That is not the intention. So generative AIs can produce fluent humanized code and data narratives. This is the ugly thing about generative AIs. But again, like we said, it's not lost yet. We need to shift the way we engage in assessment to more of evidence-based, practical, oral, and defense mode. So when students write, can they be given the opportunity to defend what they have written? And when that is done, we should be able to be in the position to judge, make value judgment about whatever they've put in. Another ugly thing is over-reliance on detection tools. And this creates arm race behavior. That's quality versus quantity. Yes,
Yes,
these
these
generative
generative
AIs
AI.
can help us to detect some of these things. But to a large extent, they have a way of also blinding us not to detect us. So we need to sharpen our skills to be able to say that, yes, we are one step ahead of the technology. So we should be able to say that, yes, this one is within the ability of our student. And this is when we know our students and how they are developing. That's AI literacy should be developed in our faculty and in our students, such that we have clear, acceptable use of it. Again, if you develop detailed assessment strategy, we can come up with technology use and how it could be used in developing assessment and deploying assessment, and how much of it students can use and how we want to employ that. So where ugly risks show up, how do we detect that these ugly things we are talking about in terms of assessment practices and the use of digital tools and generative AIs, how do we get to know them? We are saying that examination security remains a quality assurance concern. We should be concerned about examination security. Assessment practices should be on our top, or should be a top burner. So handling of examination questions and assessment tasks and storage should be dealt with critically. We should make sure that we have softwares that security is very high, such that when we generate assessment results, it could be accessed easily and you cannot manipulate it easily. So if you check the current practice, especially with the reforms that is happening at the SHS level, that is with the experience from TTL, what we have done is that we have come up with student transcript portal system where assessment guidelines are given and schedules of different modes of assessment are given at different stages. And the moment you enter the scores into the system, you can't change it. And that is score integrity. So by the end of the year 3, your assessment has been cumulatively guarded from first year to third year. And these assessments are in there, secured and guarded so that you can retrieve them easily. We need to be able to engage in some of these practices in our higher education systems so that people can trust the grading we are giving them, the certificates we are issuing them, and the results we are giving them as well. So Leakages and impersonation rates increase with weak controls. So anytime there are leakages and impersonation and people buying examination results and questions, then you should know that your system is very weak and therefore you should be able to do that. Then large class pressures can unintentionally incentivize outsourcing. And then the response, strong governance and the use of smarter assessment design can help us to mitigate some of these things. A practical reset is that our assessment should be transparent. We should secure our assessment. We should be inclusive in our assessment practice, and our assessment should be authentic in that regard. And then also, we should be able to make sure that we have a comprehensive and and better understanding of our system. I'm not sure time will permit us to discuss this, but this has been put there for us to reflect on our assessment practices. What is one assessment practice we should stop immediately and why? Where do our assessments most misalign with our learning outcomes? These questions are there for us to reflect. What would a secure assessment look like in your institution, in your class, in your faculty, in your department? How do we protect equity while tightening integrity? Equity does not mean that give some people opportunity because they have some disadvantage and others different thing. No, you should make sure that equal opportunities are given for people to demonstrate their abilities in whatever form they need. What policy change would most improve assessment quality this year in your institution? I believe that these questions can trigger some reflection and it can help us to have a relook at the way assessment is practiced in our institutions. So, for closing, we are saying that from compliance to learning, we should move from compliance to making sure that learning takes place. That is the essence of assessment in our institutions. So assessment is a statement of values and outcomes. We need to design assessment to beat surveillance. Culture beats policing. If you develop culture of integrity in our system, we may have to less police whatever is going on. We may have to engage in less proctoring or supervision and invigilation in our system. If we want deep learning to happen, our assessment must cut deep. We should engage in depth of knowledge. That is, in as much as knowledge is needed, we need to engage in higher order strategic thinking. We need to elicit activities that require students' experiences and critical thinking. In so doing, we will have a meaningful assessment and meaningful education system for our higher education. Thank you so very much for listening. And if we have some time, I think we can engage in some few questions. Thank you, my moderator.
Fantastic, fantastic. Distinguished participants, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, you just listening to Professor Eric Anani, who have dedicated his career to transforming teaching and learning. I told you his expertise is in assessment, cognition, and teacher education. And he took us through the topic, strides in assessment in higher educational institutions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hold your horses, put your questions down. We would move to the next presenter. Then we'll have the opportunity to take more questions and discuss a few things before we leave. So the second topic has to do with tools and strategies for designing AI resilient assessment. And it's my pleasure to introduce our own man, Professor Delali Kwesi-Dake, who is the head of the Department of ICT Education. Dake is a distinguished academic and a leader in the field of information and communication technology education. He has had extensive experiences in teaching, research, and curriculum development. He has contributed significantly to advancing digital education, technology integration, and innovative pedagogical practices. AI is one of the areas that he's done a lot of presentations and workshops. As head of the ICT department in education, he has played a key role in strengthening digital competencies. He has moved on ahead to promote research-driven instructions and mentoring both faculty and students towards this excellence. Today, he's coming to give us a wealth of his expertise and practical insight to guide us through this particular section. We are confident that Prof, with his knowledge and experience, he will enrich our discussion and provide valuable perspectives for all the participants here. Without much ado, please join me in warmly welcoming Prof. Delali Kwesi-Dake. You can use the icon to show some love. Thank you very much. Prof, over to you. Prof. Dake, please, over to you. Prof, it seems you are muted. Can you hear me, Prof?
Okay, I think I can hear you now.
Fantastic. Please go on ahead.
Okay. Let me share my slides so that I can start. Okay, so thank you very much for that introduction. I want to, first of all, make some clarification that this presentation is not from an expert in assessment, but it is from somebody who has used AI and knows about responsible AI design. And when we apply responsible AI design in our assessments, students, instead of using the shortcut, will go through the learning process. The idea is not for detection, but the idea is for students to go through the learning process. So the cognition is important, not just the output. So the presentation is about designing AI resilient assessments using tools and some very important strategies. Okay. Now, I'll go to the next one. What is AI resilient assessment? So AI resilient assessment is assessment that continues to measure genuine student thinking, reasoning, and understanding, even when AI tools are available. So let me stress again, genuine student thinking, reasoning, and understanding, even in the presence of AI tools. Now, AI resilient assessment is not AI proof. It is not anti-AI. It is not a detection software. It is rather a mechanism of design, making learning obvious, or the learning process is visible, aligning assessment with cognitive depth. That is what we want to test when it comes to AI resilient assessment. Now, AI resilient assessment makes AI only outsourcing harder, riskier, and less optimal. It changes the incentive structure, where students think that they can just go and copy something and paste in AI, and in seconds, they have an output. It changes that incentive structure for students. We all know that students tend to use AI mostly in assessments that are take-home, text-based, and product focus, especially where the task can be completed without supervision and does not require personal context. So in the absence of context, it's very easy for students to just use AI to finish their assignments or projects. Now, we know about the Bloom's taxonomy, and Prof earlier talked about it. We all know that it is a framework that classifies levels of thinking in education. It helps teachers to design assessments that move beyond basic recall to complex reasoning. So if you don't know much about the Bloom's taxonomy, there are levels. Level 1, remember. Level 2, to understand. I have some examples also. Level 3, to apply, to analyze, to evaluate, and to create. So that is the Bloom's taxonomy from the least level to the highest level. Okay. I'm going to mention some specialized AI tools for assessment beyond ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is what we all know or most of us are using. But beyond that, there are a lot of AI tools for assessment. Now, this AI tool doesn't mean that when students get the questions, AI cannot solve it. No. When you don't know, you go and use the tools and give students assignment, MCQs, a quiz. If you are not careful, and the students copy the question and paste it into any laudable AI engine, they'll still get the results. But the point is, when you use these tools, the learning process is conserved. So if students try to use other means, they are easily detected in terms of cheating. Anytime students try to use other means to get the work done, if you go through these tools, you realize that the students find it difficult to just copy and paste because there's a lot of context and the Bloom's taxonomy is inculcated in them. Now, tools like the Grayscope is a tool that is popular out there when it comes to automated grading and essay scoring. So you can write them down, or at the end of the presentation, I'll give out the slides so that you can go and look at some of these tools. The Cogni is also a very important tool for automated grading that is out there. Now, those who want to generate quiz generation, you don't have to spend much time to generate your quiz questions. You can use the Magic School AI. It's all in one and can help you to generate quiz questions easily. Remember, some have premium versions and the free versions are always limited because the people have to make money. So if you want to use some of these tools, remember that you have to pay for them. The Conke AI is also there, but my favorite is the QuizBot. The QuizBot is so popular that it actually follows the Bloom's taxonomy from level 1 to the highest level. And with the QuizBot, you can extract MCQs from any source, whether they are PDF files, they are YouTube files, or video files. Very easy to extract. Then we also have some other tools, the adaptive learning and assessment. So Squirrel comes to mind when it comes to that tool. Very important. You can look at that, the Squirrel tool, when it comes to adaptive learning and assessment. Then if you want to inculcate gamifications in your quiz, you can also use other tools, including the ClassPoint AI. Very good for gamified assessments. Okay. Now, let's go to our main topic. Remember, AI resilient assessment is a design decision, not a software feature. So don't think that you can just use one AI software, then you will not look at the design. Even if the AI generates some questions, that copy these questions and give it to the students for assignment, you still have to look at the design principles behind the AI software you are using, because it's all about design. AI resilience is not installed, it is designed. Now, where does the design come from? It comes from number one, authentic context. We'll look at that. Number two, visible reasoning processes. Visible reasoning. There should be obvious process when it comes to the assessment format. Number three, higher order thinking tasks. Tasks that involve creativity, critical thinking. That is part of AI resilience assessment. Number four, AI transparency requirements. So for those tasks, you have to let the student provide the source of the prompts that he used either for the project or for the assignment. Then rubric alignment. We'll look at sample rubric that inculcates AI resilient assessment so that you don't just design your rubric anyhow, but in mind, it should be AI resilient. Okay. Now, we'll look at the 5 core tools for designing. Like I said earlier, the AI resilience is about design, not software. So we want to look at the tools for designing AI resilient assessment. Number 1 tool, the AI stress test tool. Stress test tool. Now, you have to run your prompt through AI before giving it to students. And some of you don't even have the paid version of ChatGPT. But I want to advise that some of these tools, you need to get the premium versions because they have depth and they have a lot of other options. If you are only using the free versions, you will not know the full capabilities of some of these AI engines. Now, if you run your prompt through AI, the question is, can AI generate strong response in seconds? That's the question. Can AI generate strong response in seconds? Let me go back. Okay, just a minute. That's the question. Now, if AI can generate the response in seconds, then there's a challenge. It means that your stress tests have failed. Now, why would your stress test fail? Because in your design or your question to the student, you are not specific, you have not applied reasoning, you have not applied context, and of course, the process element. We'll look at the process element. It's a whole thing on its own. Now, when you apply the stress test tool efficiently, you realize that your questions are rather tend to what we call the diagnostic tool for improving assessment design. Now, let me give you one example. This is the original task. Discuss the causes of climate change. Discuss the causes of climate change. If you go and give this question to students, you are just helping them to use AI. Because AI will generate a polished summary in seconds. If you ask students discuss the causes of climate change, it is a straightforward for AI. And there's no context, there's no verification. Now let's look at after stress test. Then you redesign your question. Now the question reads, using recent climate data from Ghana and 2 peer-reviewed sources, analyze how climate change specifically affects coastal communities in the Volta region. Propose a context-sensitive intervention and justify your approach. So the second question, if a student copies that questions and inputs it into any AI engine, number one, AI will be thinking for long. It will take some seconds, be thinking. Because now you are talking about climate data. So AI is now looking for what? Climate data. Number two, you are talking about 2 peer-reviewed sources. AI will be looking for the peer-reviewed sources. Now, you also say that it should analyze how climate change specifically affects coastal. So you are more specific in terms of which region, voter region. AI is looking for information he cannot find. Now, you say propose a context-sensitive intervention and justify your approach. Two things. If a student uses the second question that you give them into any AI engine, number one, it will take some minutes for AI to be thinking. Number two, the sources will be verified by you, the lecturer or the teacher. Because you look at the climate data, whether it is authentic, you look at the peer review sources, whether they are authentic, and the student will now be careful. Because if the student just copies and presents that as the final work, you, the teacher, you now have a context. You can now look at the response from the student and analyze the climate data, the review sources, whether they are specific, whether in terms of the coastal community. AI struggles when it comes to context, when it comes to application, when it comes to justification. This is AI resilient thinking in the sense that AI will start hallucinating. So the student has to take his time and go and look for the climate data from Ghana, have to look for authentic sources. The student have to look for, in terms of context, voter region. So the student cannot just put that into AI and give you a report as assignment. It can't do that because AI will struggle and AI will hallucinate, giving outputs that are not correct. So the students who know that there is a risk. We are not saying that the person cannot put this into AI. No, he will do that. AI will give some output, but this is what we call AI resilient assessment. Compared to the first question, discuss the causes of climate change. That is easy, in seconds. But the second question, it will take some time for AI, and AI will get most of the data sources wrong. And that student can easily be in trouble. So the context is important. The application specification is important. The justification is also very important. Now, let's go to the next one. Okay, example 2. Still on the AI stress test tool. The original task, explain the process of photosynthesis. This is easy. So if you give this kind of task to students, don't expect anything else. Straight into AI because the questions are easy. Now, if you pass through the stress test, you can redesign the question. So it's about redesigning the question, making sure that data is expected, making sure that interpretation is required, making sure that context is there, so that AI cannot just fabricate. It will take time for AI, and most of the outputs from AI will be wrong. Now, so let me read the after stress test, how you redesign your question. You can say that using experimental data from a simple lab investigation. Simple lab. AI doesn't know what you're talking about. Example, measuring oxygen production in aquatic plants under different light intensities. Analyze how light intensity affects the rate of photosynthesis. Present your data in a table or graph. Compare your findings with one peer-reviewed study. Compare your findings with one peer-reviewed study. Propose one modification to the experiment and justify why it will improve reliability. This is AI resilient question. Lab investigation comes in. Measuring of oxygen production comes in. Light intensity comes in. Context, comparison, data. AI will struggle. So when the student put this question, the after stress test question, into any AI engine, there will be output, obviously. Number one, AI will take time to reason. Then AI will not get the results, so it will hallucinate. It might even go and just create some data from somewhere. And if the student present this as the final work, there is trouble. That is AI stress test tool. Now, mathematicians will say, oh, as for maths, there's no way around it. They just have to ask the question. That's not true. So, for instance, original task, solve the equation, is there. This is a straightforward equation, 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Straightforward equals 0. AI can do that in seconds. But if you go through what we call the stress test, when we say stress test, it means that how many seconds can AI produce the result? If you give it the original task, in seconds. But I can tell you the second, in terms of the redesign, it takes AI even up to minutes. Sometimes it doesn't even get it. It will say that, no, there's no output. Now, consider the quadratic equation. Number 1, solve the equation using 2 different methods. Number 2, explain why both methods must produce the same solution. Number 3, identify one common mistake students make. So we are even asking students reflection when solving this type of equation and explain why it is incorrect. Modify the equation slightly so that it has no real solution. Justify your modification mathematically. This is after stress test design. AI will be confused because there's context, there's comparison, even there's reflection, justification, error analysis. AI will struggle. So, of course, we can ask students questions, especially when they are not under supervision. But which kind of questions do we ask them? Do we take the questions through what we call AI stress test tool? Or we just go obviously and just ask questions? Do we add data? Do we add context? Do we add comparison? Do we do that? We have to be careful with that. Okay. The next one. This is a framework that is known all over. We call it the Process Visible Design Framework. It's something that I've seen all over the place doing my research. Now, for the Process Visible Design, it's about drafts, reasoning, reflection, not just the final output. And that is the danger. If you ask a student to go and write an article, and you just say, okay, write the article, maybe limit them to 300 words or 3,000 words. That is all. Any topic of your choice. There's no visible process. Then there's a challenge. The student can just use AI and bam, everything will be what? You have the output in seconds. And in that case, there's no process visible design. That is dangerous. Now, let's look at this scenario. Imagine cooking. You are cooking. The traditional assessment, you only taste the final dish. That is, the student just present the final work. But when you talk about the process visible design framework, you watch each process, how ingredients were chosen, how it was prepared, what was corrected, why adjustments were made. So these are 2 different procedures. Traditional assessment, where you are only looking for the final output, or process visible design, when you look at one stage to another stage to another stage, so that the student will learn, not just create shortcuts for you. Now, let's look at one question when it comes to process visible design framework. Example, this is a traditional version. This is very vulnerable to AI. Submit a 3,000 word essay discussing the impact of AI on higher education. You've asked students this question, voila, students are happy. Because this is traditional. Vulnerable to AI, they can just put everything into AI, and AI will generate the structure. It will give them arguments. It will include citations that don't exist. And as a lecturer or a teacher, you also don't verify the sources of citation. And AI will produce a polished writing. The final product may look strong, but you don't see the thinking. So that is why process visible design frameworks are important. You need to see the thinking. You need to break these tasks into subtasks so that the student coordinates from one stage to another stage so that it is obvious. Now, the process visible design framework Let's look at it. Stage 1, we call it the positioning stage. Here, students clarify what they are trying to solve. They clarify their main approach, the intended method. Now, the purpose is for early intellectual commitment. So that is the stage 1 of the process visible design. So anytime you want to give students a take-home project, you can pass it through this framework. Now, there should be a positioning stage for the student to work on. Then you go to the next stage, the planning stage. Students should show logical structure, method or argument, supporting points, assumptions if there are any. Now, the planning stage reveals reasoning. Number 3, development stage. Students have to submit their draft solution, the first draft. So when they are done with the positioning stage, the planning stage, then they have to submit to you their first draft. Now, after they submit the first draft, you go to stage 4, reflection. You have to give them feedback based on the first draft. You have to ask the student what was weak in your work, what changed, what did you understood, what did you misunderstood. All those are part of feedback stage for the student. Purpose, expose intellectual growth. Then before you go to what we call the final submission, where the student have to submit revised polished version. This is the process visible design framework. Now, let's take the same question using the traditional approach and let's pass it through the process visible design framework. Now, submit a 3,000-word essay discussing the impact of AI on higher education. Then stage 1, proposal, 300 words. So as a teacher or assessor, you ask, what specific aspects of AI in higher education will you examine? So you will guide the student. What is your tentative argument? Because the student is going to use AI, you are checking line by line that maybe if even the student is using AI, he's careful because there are tentative arguments. Then you also ask, what 2 sources will you start with and why? So you are actually breaking down one long essay into one aspect proposal, then number 2, the outline. So you have to ask the student, what is your central argument? What is your supporting argument? What is your counter argument? Evidence for each section, proof, sources, example. So you are on the student to go through the learning. So it is obvious some students will still, of course, paste everything into AI, but they are guided because they are going to present drafts. And in the draft, you have to ask questions because you're giving them some proposal and some tasks. So the teacher of today cannot be lazy as a teacher 10 years ago because we are in an era of AI. So you also have to do the needful and go through the draft and see whether the sources are correct and see whether the arguments are sound or these are AI arguments. You will know. But then again, if as a teacher you are also not ready to go through the stages, then there will be a challenge. And after the draft, you have to give a response to the student. A feedback, for instance, to ask, what did you change? Why did you change it? What did you disagree with and why? So the process visible design takes the student through some stages before the final output. Is very important. Now, in a nutshell, what is process visible design? The question is, AI can generate an essay, but it cannot demonstrate authentic intellectual uncertainty, personal reasoning shift, respond to specific lecturer feedback, evolution of argument over time. When we access only the final product, AI competes with students. When we access the process, we measure thinking. When we access the process, we measure thinking. So each stage, you refer the student, you mark each stage until the end. We want to avoid students just putting in prompts and copy and paste the final report. Now we are breaking down the task into multiple design patterns. Now, the third framework, the authentic context tool. Authentic context tool. Now, in asking questions, do you refer to any local data? Remember, data is an issue. So if you reference a local data, the student cannot just say that, okay, Ejumako, there's a school data there. They should make maybe a research, get that data set for their work. The student have to do some work. So if you refer to a local data, a lived experience, a real world case scenario, design assessment that requires specific context, real world engagement, not just general explanation. So always take note. If you add lived experience, if you add local data, if you add real world cases, the student and AI, they will struggle. So instead of asking students to discuss broad topics, you anchor your tasks in local data, institutional realities, community experiences, something that is in the community. AI doesn't even know. So when you ask those, students will be forced to do some extra work. Real cases, personal observation, students' own personal observation. AI performs best with generic data or knowledge. It struggles with deeply contextual situated tasks. Now, let's look at this question. That's authentic control tool strategy. Generic version, discuss the impact of AI on education. This is easy. But let's look at authentic context. Using evidence from one Ghanaian university, example UEW, or another institution, analyze how AI tools are affecting student assessment practices. Conduct at least one short interview or use a documented institutional policy. Compare your findings with one international study and identify key differences. This is authentic context version. It is not that generic. So AI will struggle because AI needs UEW institutional policy or a data from UEW. It needs to conduct at least one short interview. So the interview is AI going to now phone a lecturer in UEW and saying that, oh, no, you can't do that. The student have to go through the process. Or a documented institutional policy. Very important. Compare your findings with one international study and identify key differences. Very instructive. One international study. AI will struggle when context comes in. So remember, if you ask generic questions, that is easy for AI. But if there's a context, if there's a local data, if there's experimentation, if there's interview, AI will struggle. My duty is to expose where AI will struggle and how you should now start changing your assessment to be AI resilient. Let's continue. Now, so I've talked about that already. Then the next one, number 4, out of the 4 core tools, AI transparency framework. It requires AI use declaration and reflection. Now, this idea of banning AI, I am not for it. I'm against banning of AI outright. But it's about responsible use of AI. Now, because when we look at the transparency framework, it talks about visible, ethical, accountable, and pedagogical guided AI frameworks in terms of output and transparency. Now, the goal is not surveillance, it's intellectual honesty. Students have to be honest. So you have to refer them that when they use AI, they should tell you the prompts that they use. So in the visible design framework, you can tell them, addition, if you use AI, tell me the prompt. Because the student will know that, of course, if he doesn't provide the prompts and he's caught, there are punitive measures. So the prompt is important. Now, so there should be, after the assignment, there should be a declaration aspect. Then you ask the student, for instance, these questions. Student must state, did you use any AI tool? So you give them an assessment, assignment, a project, then there's a declaration aspect, a whole page for declaration that, did you use any AI tool, yes or no? If yes, which tools did you use? Number 3, for what purpose? So the student have to tell you, for what purpose? Is it for brainstorming? Is it for grammar? Is it for summarizing? For what purpose? What did you modify or reject from the AI output? So you ask the student, even though you use these tools, what did you reject from the output? So the student have to show you the aspects that they rejected, the AI aspect that they allow, and the aspect that they rejected. Is for responsible usage and transparency. What limitation did you observe in the AI response? So indirectly, the student have to tell you. He has to even read again and tell you the limitations. So I'll make this slide and a PowerPoint available so that you can follow up when it comes to assessment. Students have to actually declare if they use AI. If yes, there are a lot of AI tools. Which of them did you use? Now, for what purpose? Is it for just grammar? Is it just for the outline? Is it for brainstorming? Can I see the prompt? They have to declare. What did you modify or reject? They have to let you know. Now, what limitation did you observe in the AI response? This is learning taking place, not just the output. Now, so this is a typical student AI transparency framework. So the student writes, I used ChatGPT to generate an initial outline. I rejected its second argument because it was too generic and not applicable to the Ghanaian context. I revised the introduction to include local data from UEW. The AI summary lacked critical engagement with policy document, which I added manually. The AI summary lacked critical engagement with policy document, which I added manually. Now you are assessing judgment, critical evaluation, intellectual ownership, not just polished text. So when it goes like this, the student knows that at the end of every project, there's a transparency framework. And the framework have some questions that I need to answer to. So the student can say, hey, to avoid this, let me be guided even in using AI. And let me take note of the prompts. And like I said, as a teacher, you have a duty to check the data source, to check the context, and to be sure that the student don't just go and copy and paste. Because when it comes to context and local data, most at times AI will hallucinate and give you wrong answers. Now, rubric realignment tools. Now, for the rubrics, the times have passed where we just go with the traditional rubric system. Now, the modern rubric realignment tools reward reasoning, justification, and application. You redesign your marking criteria so that you reward quality of reasoning, strength of justification, depth of analysis, application of theory, evidence of intellectual ownership. Instead of just rewarding English, grammar, structure, and length, you are looking at what is the depth of analysis, what is the strength of justification, what is the application of theory. You are looking at the data. Actually, was there an interview conducted? So your rubric is now detailed in the sense that AI is being used by this student. So your rubric will look at details and the quality of reasoning. Now, always reward reasoning, always reward justification and application. AI excels at polished writing. It struggles with strong context-sensitive reasoning. Now, let's look at a traditional rubric, AI-friendly. So if you do your marking scheme and you say, okay, structure and organization, 20 marks, clarity of writing, 20 marks, use of sources, 20 marks, content coverage, 20 marks, referencing format, 20 marks. You are helping the student actually, because this is AI-friendly rubric. This rubric rewards polish and completeness. AI performs well here. AI is good here. The student is happy with you. Now, let's look at realign rubric, using what we call the rubric realignment tool. Strength of argument and originality, 25 marks. Originality. Originality can only go with data. It can only go with context. So you are looking at those. Quality of evidence and contextual application. What is the evidence provided? Was there an interview? Is it reported? Is it a local interview? Or it is AI hallucinated interview? You will know. Justification of claims and counter argument. There's mark for that. Response to feedback and reflection. Remember, in the design process, there's a place for what? Feedback. Did the student respond to feedback in the reflection? Clarity and structure. There's a mark for it. Referencing accuracy. Referencing accuracy. not just referencing format. The accuracy is very important. Still on the rubric realignment. Now, the highest marks should go to argument strength, application, critical engagement, intellectual development. AI can generate content, but it cannot easily justify intellectual discussion in a specific academic context. Because when it comes to specific academic context, data is localized, and the student have a responsibility in that. Also, still on the rubric realignment tool, if students know they are graded on reasoning, critical judgment, application, reflection, they will think twice before using AI. Let me repeat. If students know they are graded on reasoning, critical judgment, application, reflection, based on your feedback, they will think twice before using any AI tool. Now, I want to end briefly, but before then, let's look at the AI resilient assessment checklist. Number 1, authentic context. Design tasks anchored in local, real-world, or course-specific situation. AI struggles with deeply contextual and lived realities. It struggles very much. Visible process, access draft, reasoning steps, reflections, not just the final product. Thinking becomes traceable, not just readable. Higher order thinking requires analysis, synthesis, evaluation, justification, not just description. If you give data and you talk about analysis, most of the time AI will get it wrong. So always remember that in your assessment, there should be evaluation, synthesis, justification. AI will struggle. AI summarizes well. Deep reasoning requires ownership. Deep reasoning requires ownership. AI transparency requirement. It requires students to declare and reflect on AI use. Shift AI from hidden shortcuts to ethical learning tool. So always remember to add the transparency requirement anytime you give student project, so that they will come out to declare which part of AI, which AI tool did they use, which prompt did they use is very important. Rubric alignment. It rewards reasoning, argument strength, and applications. Student optimize for what is graded. Your rubric is your real AI policy. Your rubric is your real AI policy. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity. If there are any questions or any further addition, I'm ready to answer. Thank you so much for listening.
This is awesome. This is awesome. Let's show some love both to Prof. Daket and Prof. Anani. Prof. Anani took us through the first topic, strides in assessment in higher education institutions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Then we just have our own person, Prof. Daket, who just took us through the last topic or the second topic, tools and strategies for designing AI resilient assessment. In fact, it is now for us to go into the discussion. But prior to that, there are already questions flowing. If you can unmute and ask, please, you could type your question. But I'll first of all take these two questions. And the first question goes to, but whilst we are waiting to take the questions, please, Dr. Bright will share a link with us. And in that link, please help us answer a few questions before we actually go on. It's an evaluation link, and we'll be glad if you could evaluate what is actually happening whilst we go through the questions and the discussion. So the first question goes to Professor Eric Anani. Please, I have a question. You made mention of UDL in teaching and learning. One of the principles of UDL is multiple means of actions and expression, emphasizing different means of assessing learners because there's learner diversity in every classroom. How best can facilitators use these principles in their teaching? Whilst at it, please add this question as well, Prof. Anani. Another student is asking, how can assessment focus on student thinking or reasoning instead of procedural measurement or grading? This is coming from Owusu Anan, mathematics educator. Please, Prof, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Prof, for the insightful discussions. On the first one, UDL, that's the Universal Design for Learning. And as the questioner even brought out, it tells us that we have different shades of learners or students in our classroom. People who can learn through their vision, others can learn through their touch, others can learn through different modes in our classroom. Some process very fast, others are slow, others are experiential, others want diagrams to be able to learn. So if you go through what we discussed earlier, we said that the learning outcomes and the expected behavior should reflect your teaching. So in your classroom, you should also provide opportunities for differentiated teaching. That you make sure that if you are teaching a concept, how do you adapt your teaching such that individuals in your classroom can benefit? So some you can use lecture method, others you can draw, others you can let them go into group work. Some people learn very well when they are in a group. Others they can take it as homework. Others may need more time. Do you need braille? Do you need sign language? So differentiated forms of teaching, adapting the teaching process to different needs in your classroom is very, very important. So facilitators should be aware that their students learn through these means so they can then learn through that. When you do that, then it means that you are giving them multiple means of learning, multiple means of representation, and then your assessment should reflect same. So you shouldn't give only quizzes or paper and pencil assessments. Some people can do well. And from Prof's presentation, like you said, when you're asking the question directly, what is this? How do you define that? Critically examine this. If you had asked the question such that you asked the students, how would you prepare maybe or boil your eggs such that the nutrients are maintained? The students definitely will give you some means of doing that. And instead of asking, how do you maintain the nutrients in egg when you are doing this? So this tells us that we should be able to give different opportunities to different learners to be able to express, to be able to experience learning and also express whatever they have. So can the student answer by oral means? Let them answer. There are students, they can't write. They have problems. They may be dyslexic. We don't know. So they can't really express themselves, everything on paper. Do you give your students opportunity to say it? So as lecturers, we should be able to give our students to come and defend sometimes what they have written, not always just taking the text. And again, if you talk about the AI resilient assessment we are talking about, one mode is that when students write, we should also sometimes call them to come and defend what they have written. That can even help you to detect whether they generated it through digital means or AI forms. I believe that that serves the UDL. And then the second question, Ozu's question, how do we make sure that we engage students in reasoning? Reasoning or assessing reasoning demands time and space. So what it means is that our assessment should be context based and it should be problem or project oriented and performance assessment, which means that you need to give time to students. So we shouldn't always focus on 3 hour sit down examinations as the only means of assessment. So assessment, portfolio, using project, and that continuous mode gives the opportunity for students to do critical thinking and in-depth analysis or application of the knowledge in that sense. So that is what we need to do to be able to move away from this superficial assessment of students' knowledge. If you focus on only quizzes and assessment, it will be, sorry, end of semester examinations, it will be very difficult for us to do that. But we can engage in term papers, project portfolios that give students real life situations to apply their knowledge and the theories that we have learned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for such an elaborate answer. We still want to remind us that there's a form, evaluation form on the chat box. Please do us a favor by attempting to answer it, and we'll be glad. Prof Dake, a question for you. Do you currently have tools that teach student skills such as reflection, critical thinking, etc.? Is this currently mandated in direction of the written curriculum in your contest? So this is coming from Dr. Haiti, International Forums for Inclusion Practitioners, Director. So I'll take it again. Do you currently have tools that teach students skills such as reflection, critical thinking, etc.? Is this currently mandated in direction of the written curriculum in your contest, Prof. Dake?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. Currently, if we talk about tools that teach reflection, reflection can be taught even using AI in terms of prompt engineering. So AI, when it comes to ChatGPT, using AI alone can lead us to a reflection in terms of the kind of prompts that we use. And that has been our mandate, for instance, from the Department of ICT Education. So over the period, we have been trying hard when it comes to prompt engineering. And the organizers for this particular summit, they've done a lot of other programs when it comes to student aspects in prompt engineering, because the kind of prompt is necessary. Prompt that challenges students to think critically instead of just copy and paste. So virtually is the ChatGPT tool that we use, but it is the prompting that helps them. So the outline is about good prompts. Good prompts will help students to think critically. And in terms of criteria and understanding, it's all about the prompts. Bad prompts is about shortcuts. So we'll engage further. And I know there's a committee working on a university-wide prompt engineering course where students can engage with the good prompts for them to learn, not just to answer assignment questions, not just for their study groups, but for the learning process to be obvious. So that is about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dake. Prof. I need two questions for you. The first one is, person is thanking you very much. And the question has to do with, please, concerning the good assessment, is it appropriate for the lecturer to produce two different questions to the students at the same time to assess class performance, for instance, during examination period? Is it appropriate for the lecturer to produce two different questions to the student at the same time to assess class performance, for instance, during examination period?
Thank you very much. I think I even made an attempt to respond to. So one is that we should, I think, review our thinking about assessment, because, like we have said, you need to use multiple modes of assessment so that end of semester is just an aspect of it, a small part of it. And as Prof said, where your weight is, that is where your value is. So in most cases, you see the end of semester is 60%, and then continuous assessment is 40%. So everybody want to pass the continuous assessment because they have to. If you turn it the other way around, cheating and other things is not making the assessment useful. So we need to just make sure that we use varied and multiple forms of assessment, and it should be formative in nature until the summative one, which is end of semester. In fact, what we do in order to sort of check different shades of ability, all of us cannot have the same ability. No matter how you teach, no matter how you open up experiences, different abilities will show. That's why we have a grading system which goes with A, B, B plus, and so on and so forth. It tells you that human beings cannot be the same. What we are saying is that provide fair opportunities for everybody to demonstrate what they know and what they'll be able to do. So in the end of semester, you don't need to create different forms of assessment. You do what is known as embedded, and what we try to do these days. So within the same assessment, I know that if your ability is up to this level, you'll be able to answer these questions and you get this grade. So if you get grade D and somebody gets grade A, technically the assessment is differentiating between those who know and those who don't know. So there is no need to create multiple end of semesters because you've been exposed to the same category of course outline program, and therefore we expect that you show these aptitude. But in setting the questions, make sure that various abilities are shown within the test. So there shouldn't be a situation where somebody goes into the examination and will not be able to answer even one question. That shouldn't happen. It means you haven't provided opportunity for those who can do less. So we should be able to do that in one paper. You don't need to give different forms of examination. We don't practice different grading or different interpretation in this system. We do the embedded one. Only that you should make sure that it is distributed fairly. So if you come to something like WIEC examination, we have proposed 30, 40, 30. What it means is that 30 of the items, let's say I'm setting 100 items, 30 of the items should be level 1 DOK, that's the depth of knowledge. Or if you're using Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge and understanding. Then about 40% of your question should be application question. And then about 30% should be the analysis and higher order thinking. So when you do this, a student who just knows, have knowledge and understanding will have about 30% of the score. A student who can do a bit of the application can have 50% of the score. A student who can show higher ability by doing analysis and synthesis and evaluation can then also sort of have higher score, maybe 80 and above. And that gives you a proper form of assessment. So that's what I can say about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Anani. Once again, this collaborative professional development event is under the TeProD project, a joint event with the European Union and partners from Finland, Slovakia, Namibia, and Ghana. And on this platform, we have representatives from these countries that I've mentioned, if not all, and the floor is open. We can take contributions, we can take suggestions, you can make comments whilst you are helping us fill the evaluation form. I want to acknowledge some people on the platform. We have Prof. Ruby, Prof. Awuni, and other partners who are part of this project from Namibia. And if any of them have any comments, any suggestions, any contributions, the floor is still open while the discussion is still ongoing. Please still help us fill the evaluation form. Any question or questions from our distinguished participants? Any comment from our guest speakers? Any comment from colleagues on the platform? The floor is still open. I think we have about 20, 25 minutes, then we are done for the day. But if we don't have any meaningful contribution, yes, please.
It's Alpha from Namibia.
Alpha, please go ahead.
Yes, I missed out a lot on the presentation and I just catch up a little bit late. Well done. The presentation was quite interesting. I just missed out, and I believe that you're gonna share the recording with us because I really want to revisit the whole presentation again, especially on the aspect of assessing in the world of AI. That is something that is really, really, we need to work together as a team because I think we are all gambling around. We are all scared. We are all uncertain about what's next when it comes to the assessment and in the world of AI. And this presentation quite opened most of our eyes, like, okay, this can actually be done. And I also want to find out if at your university you have AI policy in terms of academic to uphold academic integrity. And if you have an AI detection tool that you put in place, or what actually did you put in place? I could see that you have to change the way we assess our students, but is there any other policy or guideline or something that you put in place to uphold student academic integrity? If you have addressed it already, I apologize because, as I said, I joined a bit late. Thank you, Richard. All the greeting from Namibia.
Thank you very much, Alpha. The man actually within the university working on these policies right here. He gave the second presentation, so I will yield to him for him to comment. Professor Delali, are you free to be able to comment on this?
Okay, thank you very much. Now there's an AI and prompt engineering course that is going to be inculcated into one of our introductory courses in the university, so that students are taken through the right prompts mechanism. And as a department, we are doing the design, and very soon we'll roll out a compulsory AI and prompt engineering course that will be part of the curriculum. And I'm aware that there's a committee that is working on AI policy for education. There's a committee that is working on that. So be rest assured that the university is taking steps for all those things to come to light when it comes to AI, because now the issue is quite dicey. If you are not careful, people also advocate that AI should be banned in terms of education. But I hold other views. It's about the good prompts. It's about responsible usage. It's about declaration. And if students know these things, I'm sure that things will fall in the right place. So the university is taking critical steps, and very soon all these things will come to light. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dake. Thank you very much, Alpha, all the way from Namibia, for your brilliant question. Any other comments? Any other suggestions? Any other contributions?
Okay, hello, I am Pearl.
Please go ahead.
I want to thank our professors for a very insightful presentation. In fact, I've been enlightened on a lot of things in regard to AI usage. But I wanted to find out if the recording will be made available to us.
The PowerPoint presentations will be made available. I may have to consult the team, the whole consortium, to be sure whether the recorded version could also be made available. But I'm very certain that the PowerPoint will be made available. I think I may have to consult, but I should think we should be able to have it since it's recorded. Just give me a moment. When we send a message across, if the recorded version could be made available for the whole participant. But the PowerPoint most definitely will be made available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Most welcome. Please, whilst you are at it, help us fill the evaluation form. It will really help us to improve and then be able to know what to do and what not to do. Any question? I saw Prof. Ruby's hand and then she dropped. Prof, please. I saw your hand, Prof. Ruby. Is she still with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Prof, please go ahead. I saw your hand, please.
Yeah, I only wanted to congratulate the presenters. I think they really did justice to the topic that was given to them. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Prof.
Congratulations, colleagues.
Thank
you. Any other comments? Yeah, Al and Kwesi, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Roland. Yeah, I wanted to find out the targeted audience of these workshops, whether it's for practicing teachers or university pre-service teachers.
That's a very good question. So the targeted audience are tertiary education lecturers, curriculum designers, assessment coordinators, academic developers, and students. So we have a mix of these representatives right here with us. We have few students among us. We have tertiary education lecturers among us. We have curriculum designers here. We have assessment coordinators right here and academic developers. Thank you very much, Roland. That was a very good question. So they are mixed here. Any other question or questions? Whilst at it, please, my evaluation form. Help us fill the evaluation form. Augustina, Profawuni, Barbara, Blessing, Chris, please help us fill it. Christopher, Cosmos, Alpha, Edmond, please help us fill it. Ima Akusia, Frida, Sergeshon, Gladys, Gloria, please help us fill the evaluation form. Grace, Hilda, Janet, Jelly, Jessica, please help us fill the evaluation form. Before we close, I would like to find out from my colleagues, Dr. Bright, Prof. Ruby, if you have any comments to pass, any observations before we close. I think there are no more questions coming up. We can call it a day.
No more questions from me.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Right.
Yes, so thanks so much for joining this section. There is also another session that will be coming up next month that will also be very insightful. So when you see the flyers and the link around, please just do well to join that also. Thanks so much for making this a great session.
Thank you very much. Maybe we'll call up Prof to finally give us a vote of thanks, then we will call it a day. Prof, please, our own Prof.
Which one? Prof. Awuni is also there.
No, I'm talking about my own Prof, Prof Ruby, my own Prof.
Okay, colleagues, thank you so much for coming. Like Dr. Ankuji said, there is another presentation coming up soon. So please watch out for the link. I'm sure you've learned so much today. To our presenters, we say a very big thank you. We hope that when we call upon you again, you will come. And remember to leave the slides with us as you said you would. We are so grateful to everyone. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.